On today's show, we are flying through on a Friday. Our questions, big questions for every single team. We are now into the Western Conference going alphabetical order. We got two teams that we know a little bit about, the Mavs and the Nuggets. A lot of other teams, Lakers, Clippers, Rockets. Big questions coming up on today's Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome. You are locked on to the NBA. My name is Nick Angstadt, host of the Locked On Mavericks podcast. And joining me, as always, on a Friday, it's Adam Mares from Locked On Nuggets and DNVR. What you got for me, Adam?
Yeah, good, nice little Friday I got planned. Had a nice little Thursday. It's been a good week, man.
Heck yeah. Good week. We're getting closer to NBA basketball. Media Day will probably be sometime next week, maybe early week after that. We're getting close. We're getting close to NBA, and I'm excited about it. BetOnline has odds for the first NBA games. That's a good sign, right? If you're in betting territory, like distance-wise, that's a good sign. Like we said, we are going to be going through some big questions for all the teams. We've done the entire Eastern Conference our last 2 weeks. If you missed some of those episodes, you can go back and watch them on YouTube, or you can listen to them on the podcast, obviously. Let's start with our big question for the Dallas Mavericks, the team that I cover. They have Reggie Bullock, Sterling Brown, Moses Brown, and now Frankie Smokes, Frank Ntilikina coming in. Those are the players that they added. They are losing Josh Richardson, JJ Redick, and Nicolo Melli. And Jason Kidd is probably the biggest question for the Dallas Mavericks, along with Kristaps Porzingis. I think both of those two guys, just together, can Kristaps Porzingis return to the player that he was and stay healthy again? Because he did stay pretty healthy last season. He missed some games here and there, but he finished the season healthy by and large. And then Jason Kidd. Can Jason Kidd first replace what Carlisle did and then do a little bit more somewhere else? Can he be something more somewhere else? I think that's a huge question for the Mavericks. I'm worried that he's not able to answer.
Well, I love that you put this because some of these teams have small questions. And you said Dallas has two, but they're major questions. I mean, those are really season-altering questions. I feel like the Mavericks are a team, I'll full disclosure, they're of the returning sort of contenders or challengers, I'm the lowest on Dallas. And I wouldn't be surprised if they prove me wrong and have a good year. It's just that in my opinion, there's too many avenues for things to get messy there, including, of course, Jason Kidd not working out or not connecting with Luka Doncic or not connecting with Kristaps Porzingis or Kristaps Porzingis not connecting with Doncic. There's just too many things that could go on there, in my opinion. And then I look at that roster, and I think Luka is one of the best floor raisers in the NBA. So, okay, it doesn't matter that it's not a perfect roster or one that really impresses you. You have Luka. But when you factor in all those other things, all it takes is one disgruntled Luka Doncic for this season to really go off the rails.
And I have watched every single game of Luka's career, and there are times when he does not get up quickly. And so
Right.
if we are one like ligament away from the Mavericks just completely being a train wreck, like without Luka Doncic, they are like nothing. Right? Like,
But injury is true for all of these teams. But I just wonder for them, Luka's also a guy who wears his emotions on his sleeve and can be a bit moody. And I don't mean that as an insult. A lot of players are moody. But if he's not comfortable with the way the season is going and the relationship with the coach, he's not the kind of guy that will just be happy and go out there and give the same production. I think he's a guy that you would notice he's unhappy.
Case in point, the Bob Bulgaris story, all that
Right.
stuff. If you guys didn't read that story, that was a huge deal for Mavericks fans and for the entire Mavericks organization. Bob Bulgaris was a guy, Bob Bulgaris. You probably heard him on Bill Simmons' podcast. That's the only way I knew him before. Right. He's this big gambler, and he was brought in to be the analytics guy for the front office, but more so on Cuban's side of it than Donnie Nelson's side of it. And then all of a sudden, the story came out that Bob Bulgaris was starting to dictate lineups and things to Rick Carlisle, which isn't abnormal for an analytics department to give them suggestions on things, but to decide what starting lineups and lineups that Rick Carlisle, coach that had been there for 13 years, that have won their only title, that was a big thing. And then the big story was that Luka was yelling at Rick Carlisle from the side, "Who's in charge of this team, you or Bob?" Ooh, like you said, Luka sometimes can get cantankerous and feisty if things aren't going his way. So those are the two big questions for the Mavericks. We've been talking about them all summer.
Can I ask you
Both
one
of those
quick
guys.
question, though? I want to ask you, just take out Jason Kidd, Luka, and Kristaps. Who's the next most important player? Just like, who's the pivotal player? Not the best, but the most pivotal for the season.
Man, maybe Tim Hardaway Jr. He's just been like the guy that can when he gets hot, the Mavericks, like when he's hitting from three, the Mavericks are kind of unstoppable on offense. They just have that other guy you can kick out to. I think maybe Jalen Brunson could slide into this as well, because the Mavs didn't go get that secondary creator that they really needed. Cuban said at the beginning of the summer, we need to get a guy to take some pressure off of Luka. Is Dragic going to be that guy that comes in and does that? It just hasn't happened yet. So can Jalen Brunson step up to another level? He got kind of embarrassed in that Clippers series. He went from like 20 minutes a game the first 3 games to like 10 minutes a game the last 4 games. And so he's got a lot to work on this offseason. He may come back with a vengeance. And if he takes another step forward, that's huge for this team. Yeah.
Brunson might be my answer as well. I'm curious. Tim Hardaway Jr., 2 years in a row shooting nearly 39 or 40% from three. I think he's career 35 or 36. I think 2 years in a row, you probably say that's who he is now. Like, he's developed it and he's comfortable. But that's one area. The last 2 years, if there's any 2-year sample size where shooting might have run a little artificially hot, it'd be these last 2. So his shooting, more than him as a player, his shooting is a pivot point for me.
For sure. And they re-signed him to that deal. It was pretty great and all that. So, all right, let's move on to your Denver Nuggets. I'm just going to hand this off to you because you're the expert here.
My big question for the Nuggets this season is, can Michael Porter take the leap, and not just the leap as a player, because I think he was really good last year, sneaky good down the stretch. The last 8 weeks of the season or so, he was all-star caliber. I think 24 points per game over the final 25 games or so. So can he take a leap off of that? But more importantly, do him and Jokic develop a two-man rhythm, a two-man game, or some type of where it's not just the greatness of each player, but the combined greatness of the two? They kind of existed so far in their careers separate from each other. This is the year where they kind of have to work together in ways we haven't seen yet.
My question that I wrote down was, can Michael Porter Jr. bridge the gap? Basically, bridge the gap for the offense from, Jamal Murray's going to be out to maybe when he comes back in. And so, yeah, that's huge. I think the one of the best parts of the Nuggets has been the relationship and the connection between Jokic and Jamal Murray, right? The way they work together, the way, it's sort of Draymond Curry-like, where Murray is just like running around a little bit and Jokic just stand still, but he makes so many things happen with his passes and vision and all that kind of stuff. But
it's interesting you said Draymond and Steph, though, because I'd have to really put thought into this. I'm shooting from the hip on this, but that might be the only duo that I feel has better chemistry. That's not to say like the Anthony Davis-LeBron duo is probably better because they're better players and they fit, perfectly. But when you talk about just sharing a brain and kind of just knowing where each other are, those Draymond, Steph, Murray, Jokic, I'm not sure there's anybody else that's on that level.
You don't think Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid are on that level?
Probably not.
Yeah, and you said people, forget about Michael. Like people forget Michael Porter Jr. is a bucket. Right?
People forget, yeah.
19 points a game last year, even with Jamal Murray and everything. Like that's a lot. So there you go.
He's one of the most interesting players, by the way, just in the NBA this season, because there is a scenario in which he's an all-star this season. He's that caliber of player. He was a 50-40-90 guy or 50-40-85 guy last year on 7 3-pointers a game. I mean, he's a very efficient player. This might be a year where you're like, yeah, he's 24, 25 point per game scorer. You get all-star consideration.
Yeah, and he only took 13 shots a game last year. I have to imagine that goes up to like 17, 18, like 20 maybe. Like without
yeah, definitely will go up. I'm curious to see what he does with those shots.
What are the expectations for Denver? What are people actually expecting them to do this year?
That's an interesting question. I think Vegas has their line somewhere around 46, 47 games, and it's a good line. Denver had the second best record in the NBA last season after Jamal Murray went down. I think that was surprising people. After he went down, they had the second best record in the NBA. I think Denver is going to be a little bit better in the regular season than probably the average person thinks. The question will be in the playoffs. They've been great in the playoffs in large part because of that Jokic Murray two-man game. And we just have no idea what level. Nobody knows what level Murray will return to. And so guessing them in the playoffs is a mystery. But I think in the regular season, they might surprise people at how stable, how much they look like last year's team, even without Murray.
Yeah, Jokic is just like an offensive engine in and of himself, and so he can just create that. You can stick with anybody in any game, basically, and then he's such a closer too. Right? He just closes out games, and that was a narrative I'm glad that kind of got kicked to the curb, that Jokic can't close games, because he just is, and so that'll keep you in any regular season game, and that makes him a lot better than maybe people see them on paper. All right, coming up, we got some big teams coming up: the Warriors, the Clippers. The Rockets are a little sneaky. Maybe they have questions. Maybe they have more questions than big ones. Maybe small questions than big ones. We'll get into that coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about Built Bar. Built Bar is a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. They're absolutely delicious. They keep coming up with new flavors too. Right now, they have these puff bars, these marshmallow puff bars. I've been eating the coconut marshmallow puff. I love them. I eat them all the time. They have mint marshmallow right now, as well as banana cream pie. And the mint marshmallow, 130 calories, 17 grams of protein, 5 grams of sugar. They're great. They're great for you. I eat them all the time. They're all covered in 100% chocolate, and they only have like 5-6 grams of sugar in them. That's absolutely wild for these bars. Use the promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off the puff bars, the regular bars. They still have peanut butter brownie, coconut almond. The mint brownie is probably the GOAT. And then you have the Built Boost, Built Bites, Built Broth. You can use Locked15 on any of those products and get 15% off. So go check it out, built.com. Also, I want to tell you about Sweatblock. Sweatblock is a product that is brand new. It's doctor created, doctor recommended. And right now, it's currently the #1 product for antiperspirant products on Amazon. That's insane. There's so many antiperspirant products on Amazon. So you know that people are ordering it, and then they're ordering it again as well. They're getting it shipped, do whatever, those Amazon subscriptions. Now Amazon does a thing where that you can pick a day of the week you want your boxes delivered to you. So that probably people are filling up their box, their day of the week box with Sweatblock. They're wipes that you can wipe under your underarms the night before, and you get a dry shirt guarantee for 7 days. And if Sweatblock doesn't keep you dry, you get your money back. You can get them at Amazon. A lot of people are buying them on Amazon right now, but you can get them at sweatblock.com and get them for 20% off if you use the promo code LOCKEDON. Again, sweatblock.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDON for 20% off today at sweatblock.com. All right, Adam Mares, let's get into some more of our big questions for NBA teams. We're moving in alphabetical order. We did my Mavs. We did your Nuggets. Let's move on to the Golden State Warriors. This is, I think such a high variance team, I think, for a lot of people, depending on how you feel about them, how you feel about Klay, how informed you are about Klay. I think you have a whole bunch of different opinions. My question is, when and how does Klay come back, right? The when is a big question, but the how is a question. You mentioned for Jamal Murray, how he comes back. We're not sure how he's going to look. Klay is coming back from 2 of the maybe worst injuries an NBA player can go through. What is he going to look like? Does it matter? Can he still just stand still and shoot? He doesn't dribble anyway, so it doesn't really matter for Klay Thompson. But when and how does Klay come back is the big one for me.
And it sounds like everything I've heard, January is a healthy timeline. I mean, there was even some reports of maybe trying to push that into December, Christmas, or this or that. But even if it's January, unlike with Kawhi Leonard or Jamal Murray, who both are expected March or later, January is half the season. You get half the season to kind of come back and get your legs under you and get a rhythm and everything else. So I think that is an encouraging sign for Golden State's chances. But you also put this sort of in your list of questions there. Does it matter? And here's the thing I wonder. I think Golden State is poised to make a leap this season from where they were last year. I think even just effectively running it back, in large part because we were talking about chemistry issues and some of the young players needing the experience. And I think they got that, some of the fringe role players that they needed to, Damian Lee, Jordan Poole, these guys are a little bit more familiar with the system, how to play that Warriors ball movement style basketball. And then you've got guys in Otto Porter and Nemanja Bjelica. Okay, there's injury concerns, health concerns, sure. But those are high IQ players that know how to fit in, around star talent. So I think the Warriors are going to be pretty good this year. I'm a little higher on them than I think most people.
And I think most people that are listening to this will know this, but the Warriors were a top 5 defense last year. We're not just talking about a team that is just all offense and you're like, oh, well, they can't defend. Like, they were a really good defense without Klay. So maybe they get Klay back and that helps. But if you're a good defensive team, you can basically stick with anybody. All the top defenses were good teams last year. Utah, the Lakers, the Sixers, the Knicks, the Warriors, Suns, like those are like the top 6 teams on defense. So we mentioned the players they're losing: Kent Bazemore, Kelly Oubre, Eric Paschall. Like, you're not really losing sleep about any of those guys.
Kelly Oubre might be addition by subtraction.
And then Jordan Bell Remember when everybody was clowning the Bulls
Right.
about the money and everything, the cash considerations or whatever for Jordan Bell? And they're bringing in Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, Andre Iguodala, Nemanja Bjelica, Otto Porter. All those guys seem like wild cards to me. They all have all those players have big questions for them. James Wiseman seems like another addition his second year. Is he somehow effective this season, even more so than he was last year? He kind of struggled, and their lineup struggled when he was in. And maybe he comes out this year and they're actually good when he plays. That would be a huge boost for them.
They are also a team that has a big trade in them if they want to utilize it, go that route. They have Andrew Wiggins on that max contract. They've got 3 young players, Moses Moody. You've got James Wiseman. And you've got Jonathan Kuminga. So you could put together a really nice trade package for a max caliber player if that's the direction they choose to go. And if you talk about adding another star player to the talent already there, that's a pretty good team.
How long do we get to say that? I feel like we've been saying that for 2 years now. Like ever since Durant left, they've been.
Well, let me ask you that. Do you expect them to make a trade this year, or do you think this is the team more or less that they bring in? When I say trade, a big trade.
Right. Yeah. I think this is what they got. Like, I think they're just going to keep running this back because unless this season is probably this is a pretty winnable season. There's not like a team, especially in the West. I don't think there's a team that stands out as, oh, it's them and everybody else. Like maybe the Lakers, but even so, they got some big questions too. We'll get into them in the third segment, but it's a winnable West. And so if they know, maybe they'll wait until Klay comes back, and that's the trade deadline. And if that happens, then they make that deal then. I think maybe that's what they've been waiting on this whole time. So
I think they make a move. I think they make a big move that shocks and kind of changes the dynamic in the NBA.
For a person that works for a content network, I would be great. I would be grateful for that. That'd be great. I would appreciate that. The Houston Rockets. My big question for them, they basically I tweeted this out today. They have 8 players that were born after Y2K.
Y2K. I like that you put it that way.
When you put it that way, it sounds crazier than after 2000. But yeah, for them, I think it's all about Jalen Green. Can Jalen Green be a superstar? Can he come in and automatically? He says he wants to average 30 points a game. If he does that answers are probably a big question for them. But can he replace basically the James Harden void there in Houston?
I mean, not this year. He's not going to do that. But it's not just him. Şengün as well. Kevin Porter, they've got some guys on this roster that are just going to be really exciting and really interesting. I think that this is a team that will be bad. I mean, I think it's almost certain they're going to be one of the worst teams, but they might be fun bad. And for NBA purposes and for guys like you and me, fun bad. Like, I'll take it. You got to have bad teams because every league has to have bad teams. They might as well be fun. I think that the Rockets will be a team I watch more of than I did last year by a good margin.
Yeah, like you said, they have a lot of interesting players. What is Alfred Sengun? What is Usman Garuba? What is Josh Christopher? What is Kevin Porter Jr. still? We still kind of words out on him. Jayshawn Tate, KJ Martin. Like, those are all like young, and Jalen Green we mentioned before. Those are all like young, interesting players that have a pretty high ceilings, and then they probably low floors for a lot of those guys too.
I think they're going to get smacked a lot, but they're going to have they're going to beat the Nets or the Warriors, or they're going to have these nights where it's like, oh wow, so and so just really took it to Anthony Davis tonight or LeBron or whatever.
Be freaking out about Usman Garuba's defense one night, like Durant just didn't show up.
The Giannis stopper, is this what he is? Like, okay.
Yeah, right. Exactly. All right, let's move on to the Los Angeles Clippers. I just put Kawhi question mark. That's my big question for them. Is he anything? Is he anything next season, or is he just completely out? To me, it seems like he'll probably just be completely out. And this team is the team that actually beat the Utah Jazz in the last couple of games. So this team is not they're not in the lottery probably, but without Kawhi, I don't think they have championship aspirations or even maybe out of a first round aspirations. Yeah,
I agree. They caught lightning in a bottle last year after Kawhi went down. I thought it was a tremendous coaching job by Ty Lue. Some great performances, Reggie Jackson and Paul George in particular. But I don't know that you repeat that for an 82-game season. I'm lower on the Clippers than most. And you asked about Kawhi Leonard. I don't see it. A guy that's had that much injuries and is this late in his career, do you really – first of all, do you even risk it if you are cleared to play and you can't come back till April or even May and you're counting on coming back during the playoffs? Do you even risk it at that point when you're this late into your career, or do you say, you know what, let's get to next year and give it our better shot? So I'm lower on the Clippers than most people are.
Clippers bringing Eric Bledsoe back, actually. Justice Winslow. And then out is Patrick Beverley, Rondo, Boogie. Like, basically, essentially the same team without Kawhi Leonard then. That's kind of the team that they are. Is it a team you're interested in? It seems like you're more interested in Houston than you are about the Clippers. Right? There's something interesting about a team you don't know anything about, right?
And that's part of it. Is I feel like we saw the best possible scenario for the Clippers. We saw that last year without Kawhi Leonard, of course.
Yeah.
We saw that. So am I interested in? Do I have faith that it's going to be meaningfully better or different? Not really. So yeah, it does feel a little bit like the Hangover 3. Like, all right, I got it. I got the plot points. I got the jokes. We're going to run it back. We're in a different city now. I get that part, but okay.
They'll just be that team that your team plays, especially covering the Nuggets and Mavs. Like, oh, dang it, the Clippers are coming in town. They're just going to be annoying. They're going to play defense. They got new.
They might be less annoying. I was going to say they might be less annoying.
They don't have Beverly. Still got Marcus Morris though. That one still.
He is annoying. That's a good
gets
point.
Mavs fans. Coming up, we got 2 more teams left. The Los Angeles Lakers, the Memphis Grizzlies. I'm sure the Lakers don't have any questions. Everybody knows everything about them. We'll get into them coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about rockauto.com. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models of cars, it's impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts that you need. How would it be possible for them to have everything? If you just go to rockauto.com, just scroll their main page. It shows you all just the brands of cars, and you'll be like, oh yeah, there's no chance that a building can hold all of these parts. Especially one that's on the side of the road that you can just drive up to and park and then walk into and ask somebody if they have it. So go to rockauto.com right now. They have all the parts available for your car or truck, and they'll help you save money too. For example, a Honda Odyssey fuel pump is $353 from a chain store. You can get that for $216 from rockauto.com. So they have everything you need, and they help you save money. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box? They know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Also, I want to tell you about betonline.ag. Like I told you, they have odds already for NBA games. I mean, that's a good feeling for me whenever you got odds already. The Denver Nuggets. Let's see. There we go. Denver Nuggets. They are playing at the Phoenix Suns, October 20th.
You already got a line?
I already got a line. Do you think the Denver Nuggets are favored or not against the Phoenix
Suns? Definitely underdogs. They're definitely. Let me guess. 6. I was going to guess 6. All right.
6.5 point underdog. The over-under for combined points is 224.5. That seems a little low. I feel like the offense is going to be rolling in that game. But if you feel like the Denver Nuggets can either cover that, or if they can just outright win that game, go bet on them. BetOnline.ag, use the promo code LOCKEDON, or right now you can use the promo code NFL100. You'll get 100% welcome bonus to your first deposit. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. All right, Adam Mares, let's get into our last 2 teams. We know the Lakers are just head and shoulders better than everybody else in the West, right? Adam just completely threw up in his mouth. All the acid reflux came up. The same thing I did for the Clippers, I did for the Lakers. Westbrook, question mark. How does he fit? How does he work? Is it going to be one of those things where they just look incredible in the regular season, and then in the playoffs it becomes an abject disaster like it did for the Rockets, a couple years ago when they just got rid of centers and just completely decided to go all out playing with Westbrook, and then in the playoffs they just got completely destroyed? Is that the way that it looks for the Lakers too, or can LeBron just bring him to the next level? Can he be the key to unlock? It didn't work for Andre Drummond, but maybe it'll work for Russell Westbrook, that he can be the key to unlock, the best version of Russell Westbrook.
I just don't see it. I might be being the hater here, but I don't see it. I don't think the Lakers are going to be bad, but I don't know if they're going to be the juggernaut that you would expect when you have 3 names of that caliber. I don't think the pieces fit. If Westbrook has a good season playing off ball, it'll be his first one. And I don't know that LeBron is ready to move off ball, or even should move off ball as much as you would need to make Westbrook feel comfortable playing the way he's played so far in his career. So I don't see it with them as being that top level team. And then you have to factor in just the injury risk that you have with 2 players that are north of 30, and another player in Anthony Davis that has especially recently run into some bumps and bruises. So I don't know. I'm down on the Lakers a little bit.
Yeah, that trio is obviously a big question, but I look at the rest of this team. Like they lost Dennis Schroeder, Markieff Morris, Ben McLemore, Kyle Kuzma, Wes Matthews, Andre Drummond, Alex Caruso, KCP, and Marcus Gasol. That's like their entire rotation outside of those three guys. And they brought in, obviously, Westbrook, we talked about. They brought Dwight Howard back. It's positive. Melo, Ariza, Bazemore, Ellington, DeAndre Jordan, Malik Monk, Kendrick Nunn, Rajon Rondo. Like, is that better than the list of players that I gave to you before? Probably not. They're definitely older for sure. And so you mentioned injury risk. There's injury risk with a lot of those guys too. So yeah, there's a lot of big questions for the Lakers. I think they'll probably be an incredible regular season team. They'll probably be number one in the West, and everybody will be, singing their praises. ESPN.
I don't know. I don't know. This is what I'm saying.
You're going to stagger LeBron and Westbrook to me. Westbrook dragged that Wizards team to like a pretty good record at the end of the season. He can still be a solid player in the regular season.
Were they a 1 seed? I'm trying to remember. Were they a 1 seed?
The Wizards?
That's right. Yeah, they were not. Because the Lakers are going to be a 1 seed because of Westbrook's ability to drag them. Like, there is a difference between a great player dragging a bad team into the playoffs and a great player dragging a team to the number 1 seed. And that's the thing that it takes a lot more than just one guy being great. And it's the pieces and how they fit. And there's just too many question marks for me there.
Well, it helps that they have LeBron and Anthony Davis as well.
It does help. I mean, and the Lakers for large periods of this last season even looked like the best team in basketball. So maybe we see it again, but that's a lot of turnover. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a slow start. And with their age, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a slow finish.
True. Yeah. So I think they still will be maybe the best team in the Western Conference record-wise in the regular season, but they'll lose a couple games along the way where we'll go, oh man, they maybe just got exposed there by a team playing some playoff basketball at the end. So that's my take on the Lakers there. Our last team here, the Memphis Grizzlies of Memphis. Coming in is Steven Adams, Jarrett Culver, Chris Dunn. Going out is Jonas Valanciunas, Grayson Allen, Justice Winslow. So, I mean, basically,
yeah. With Valanciunas and Adams, it's kind of a funny swap,
Yes.
Similar but different players, but still kind of an interesting fit. When this trade happened for Memphis, I was a little bit confused. I like Grayson Allen as another piece. Jonas Valanciunas was one of the heart and souls of that team last year. So you take him away, not necessarily in talent, although he was very good last season, but just as a guy that it felt like the team got energy from him in big moments. So you lose that, and I wonder how they'll replace it. But that being said, to me, this is all about the young guys on that roster. And you talk about a John Morant, a Jaren Jackson Jr. I think those guys are poised for even better seasons this year. Dylan Brooks even. They just have guys that I think you can expect some big things from.
Yeah, I think the big question, I think we kind of know John Morant. He's a rising star for sure, and he can win big games. We saw him in the playoffs be absolutely incredible in that game 1 against the Jazz. But the big question for me is Jaren Jackson Jr. What does he look like? What can he be? He was a guy that we thought, coming out of that draft class, he may be one of the best players coming out of this draft. And now it's just been a couple years of, okay, well, he's gotten injured. We're not really sure what we're getting out of him. And so that's the big question. Can he rise back up to be that number 2? Maybe moving Jonas Valanciunas out of the way helps to give him some more space. He can play some more 5 possibly. That's a big question for me, is what he is going to look like. But your point about Jonas is true. There's just times last year where he was just a mismatch, and they fed off of that energy because he could just go in, get a bucket when he wanted to, because he was bigger and stronger than a lot of the 5s that teams were playing, especially the Mavericks. He just destroyed the Mavericks a couple times because the Mavs struggle defending 5s, and there's not many centers like him anymore that can just overpower and destroy. It's like Embiid, Jokic.
Yeah, not that many.
Jonas, right? There's not too many of those.
I wonder if they're going to be a good 3-point shooting team this season, because they weren't in the last couple seasons. But you look at some of their young guys, DeAnthony Melton, Desmond Bane, even Dylan Brooks. All of those guys project to be more impactful shooters. You add a Juancho Hernangomez. I don't know how much he'll play, but he's another option to sort of space the floor at the power forward spot. And then, of course, Jaren Jackson Jr. I wonder if they actually have some sneaky, spacey lineups in there where the guys aren't just good shooters, they're elite shooters.
I think Juancho went to the Celtics.
Oh, that's right. He did get moved, didn't he? He got traded.
He got moved like a couple times.
Yeah, he got moved a few times. You're
right.
Right.
Memphis made so many moves. It's kind of hard to keep track of what their team was. And it seemed like they made all these moves, shuffled around, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is kind of the same team again, just Jonas, Steven Adams instead of Jonas.
Right.
So, but what do you think about? Let's just end here. What do we think about Ja Morant? What's his ceiling? What do we think he is in the future? Is he just going to be Derrick Rose, and we'll see what Derrick Rose would have looked like if he didn't get injured, kind of deal? What do we think is the ceiling for a Ja Morant?
I mean, I think we're going to see another bump. He's at 19 points per game last year. 3-point shot wasn't there, but of course that's not really his game. I think this is a year where the game slows down for him a little bit. He sees even more angles, gains even more confidence now that he's played in some important games. So I think he takes another step forward. I wouldn't be surprised if he was in the conversation for an all. I don't think he'll make an all-star game this season, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were moments early on in the season where thinking, hey, who's outplayed him? Let's count the guards. Should he be in that spot?
That 47-point game in the playoffs against the Jazz was just
beast.
Especially coming off of that game one where they won that game. Man, like there's just very few players when they get going that I get more excited for than Ja Morant, because he's just so energetic and like he's into it, and you love to see it for Ja Morant. So yeah, I think you're right. I think he will be pressing on the door for an all-star game for sure this season.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Memphis jumped one or two of the teams that we just kind of have penciled ahead of them, I think just because they've been there before, like a Portland, possibly a Golden State, a Denver, a Dallas. I wouldn't be surprised if Memphis leapfrogged one or two of those teams in the standings when the dust settles.
And we talk a lot about, a young team. Can they get a taste of it? Can they get to the playoffs and get that experience? This Memphis team just did that.
Right.
They just got that taste. They got a win, and they got to feel what a win feels like, especially a win on the road in Utah, right? Like that's probably a pretty good feeling for them. They got a taste of it. Maybe they come back, like you said, with more confidence, feeling better about themselves, more together, all that kind of stuff. Another year for them together. So I think this is going to be an interesting team. Like you said, they may surprise a couple of people here and there.
Yeah, I'm with you. On high on Memphis.
There you go. We will finish up next week with our big questions, so come back and check us out. Go listen to Monday's edition with Josh Lloyd. He goes around and asks the big questions for three different hosts from covering different teams. It's great stuff. Also, subscribe on YouTube if you're not. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On NBA. Boom.